Napoleon Bonaparte, one of the most powerful and controversial figures in European history, is often remembered for his brilliant military strategies, the expansion of the French Empire, and his eventual downfall. However, the story of his death is shrouded in mystery, with conflicting reports and theories that continue to fascinate historians and conspiracy theorists alike. Officially, Napoleon's death on May 5, 1821, was attributed to stomach cancer, but many have questioned this conclusion, suggesting that Napoleon may have been poisoned by those who saw him as a threat even in his final years of exile. Napoleon spent the last years of his life in exile on the island of St. Helena, a remote British colony in the South Atlantic Ocean. After his defeat at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815, Napoleon was banished to the island, where he lived under strict surveillance by British forces. The island, known for its isolation and harsh conditions, was the perfect place to ensure that Napoleon would never return to power. His health, however, began to deteriorate during his time in St. Helena, and his death, which occurred just 6 years later, has since become a subject of intense debate. The official cause of Napoleon's death, according to the medical records, was stomach cancer. His personal physician, François Carlo Antomarchi, who was present during his final days, conducted an autopsy and confirmed this diagnosis. Napoleon's symptoms, including abdominal pain, weight loss, and vomiting, seemed to align with the known signs of stomach cancer. Yet, despite the apparent clarity of this diagnosis, certain aspects of Napoleon's death have never fully added up, leading many to suspect foul play. The question of whether Napoleon was truly a victim of stomach cancer or whether he was deliberately poisoned has been at the heart of numerous theories. Some believe that Napoleon's enemies, particularly the British who held him captive on St. Helena, may have resorted to poisoning him in order to eliminate the threat he posed, even in exile. Others argue that Napoleon's death was the result of a long-standing conspiracy involving the French aristocracy or other political figures who saw his death as the final chapter in the downfall of the Napoleonic era. In the years following Napoleon's death, several figures close to him, including his companions in exile, began to voice their suspicions about the official cause of death. Some reports suggest that Napoleon himself believed he had been poisoned, a theory that was further fueled by the suddenness and severity of his decline in health. His deteriorating condition, coupled with the fact that he had been under the constant watch of British guards, made it difficult for many to accept that he could have died from natural causes alone. This brings us to the central question: could Napoleon have been poisoned? If so, who would have been responsible for such an act, and what would have been their motivation? In this first part of the story, we will explore the medical evidence surrounding Napoleon's death, the circumstances of his final years on St. Helena, and the beginning of the speculation that would fuel a lasting mystery for generations. The idea that Napoleon Bonaparte was poisoned during his exile has persisted for nearly 2 centuries. Several key pieces of evidence have been cited by those who argue that Napoleon's death was not due to stomach cancer, but rather the result of deliberate poisoning. Among the most prominent figures to champion this theory was Dr. Francesco Antomarchi, Napoleon's personal physician. Antomarchi, who conducted the autopsy, confirmed the official diagnosis of stomach cancer. However, his words were not enough to quell the suspicions that surrounded Napoleon's death. Over time, the theory of poisoning gained traction, and a number of factors have contributed to the enduring belief that Napoleon was murdered. One of the most significant pieces of evidence cited by those who support the poisoning theory is the condition of Napoleon's hair. After his death, several strands of Napoleon's hair were collected by his supporters and have been preserved in museums and private collections around the world. In the early 1960s, scientists conducted a series of tests on Napoleon's hair looking for traces of toxins. To their surprise, they discovered elevated levels of arsenic in the strands. Arsenic, a highly toxic substance, was commonly used as a poison during the 19th century, and its presence in Napoleon's hair led many to believe that he had been poisoned. The presence of arsenic, however, does not necessarily prove poisoning. Arsenic was often used in the production of various items, such as wallpaper, cosmetics, and even medicines during Napoleon's time. Additionally, some historians have argued that the arsenic in Napoleon's hair could have been the result of environmental factors, as it was not uncommon for individuals to be exposed to small amounts of arsenic in their surroundings. Nevertheless, the discovery of high levels of arsenic in Napoleon's hair remains one of the most compelling pieces of evidence for those who believe he was poisoned. Another factor that has fueled the poisoning theory is Napoleon's rapidly declining health in the months leading up to his death. Although he had suffered from various ailments during his time on St. Helena, including what appeared to be digestive issues and fatigue, his condition seemed to worsen dramatically in a short period of time. Witnesses reported that Napoleon's health seemed to deteriorate at an alarming rate, and he was soon bedridden, unable to eat or drink without extreme difficulty. These sudden changes in his health, combined with the symptoms of vomiting, abdominal pain, and weight loss, led some to believe that he had been poisoned gradually over time, with the poison working slowly to cause his organs to shut down. Some proponents of the poisoning theory also point to the fact that Napoleon's death occurred under the watchful eyes of his British captors. The British had a vested interest in ensuring that Napoleon never regained power, and the idea that they may have resorted to poison as a means of eliminating him is not far-fetched. Napoleon had made many enemies during his career, and it is believed that there were several factions who would have been willing to take extreme measures to prevent his return to the political stage. The British, in particular, had suffered greatly from Napoleon's military campaigns, and many in Britain saw him as a dangerous figure who had to be dealt with permanently. Napoleon's death has remained one of the most enduring mysteries in history. Despite numerous investigations, autopsies, and scientific studies, the question of whether he was poisoned or died of natural causes remains unresolved. The conflicting accounts, the mysterious circumstances of his death, and the compelling evidence that points to poisoning continue to fuel debate among historians, scientists, and conspiracy theorists alike. In the years following his death, the French government took steps to preserve Napoleon's legacy and to ensure that his memory would live on in the hearts and minds of the French people. His body was eventually returned to France in 1840 and entombed in a grand mausoleum at the Invalides in Paris. The French people, who still revered Napoleon as a hero, wanted to ensure that he would be remembered as the great leader he was, despite his fall from power. For those who believe that Napoleon was poisoned, his legacy remains somewhat tarnished by the suspicion that his death was not the natural end to a brilliant life, but rather the result of a conspiracy to eliminate a dangerous political figure. Some still argue that the British government, or even Napoleon's own enemies within France, orchestrated a slow and painful death for the emperor as a means of ensuring that he would never return to power. In the decades since his death, new theories and evidence have continued to emerge, keeping the debate alive. Some have suggested that Napoleon's final years on St. Helena were not just a period of exile, but a carefully controlled confinement designed to prevent him from plotting any escape or return. Others have speculated that Napoleon's death was part of a larger international plot to ensure that he would not disrupt the balance of power in Europe. The theory that Napoleon was poisoned remains one of the most persistent and controversial theories surrounding his death. Whether or not Napoleon was deliberately poisoned by his enemies, or whether his death was the result of natural causes, the mystery will likely continue to capture the imagination of those interested in the history of this enigmatic figure. The death of Napoleon Bonaparte, like so many other historical events, continues to be a subject of speculation and intrigue, leaving historians and fans of history alike to wonder what really happened during Napoleon's final days. If you're fascinated by this mystery, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more explorations into the untold stories of history's most puzzling events. Stay tuned as we uncover even more intriguing secrets from the past.